Welcome to the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 022.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations, aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom, and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Welcome to the Veterinary Project Podcast. You are joined in 2021 by yours truly, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Mikey, how you doing?
I like the dramatic pause, Johnny. I didn't know what you were going to say, but I'm doing well, happy to, well, you know what? I'm happy to turn the page on 2020, but I'm not, I wasn't dreading it, but it is nice. The start to the new year is always kind of that surge of motivation and hope of how good the year will be. So I'm doing well.
Agreed. And I think we can feel it as across the sense of humanity that these vaccines come through for COVID as they're supposed to, and we get a change in certain governments south of us, then things could look good. We've just lost half of our podcast listeners.
Yeah, Johnny's going political.
No, I am not. I'm so less political than I was a year ago just because of some things going on in our country and therefore also in the South. But the bigger and better things, 2021, we're starting with another fantastic episode here. We have Dr. Kristin Kirkby Shaw having joined us. And again, we've had some amazing guests. This conversation, I would say we got deep real quick and really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've never chatted with Kristin before. I know you had mentioned her many times. And really good conversation, so open, vulnerable, lots of experience. So really enjoyed it.
Agreed. Guys, you're going to hear her bio right away here, but this is a very, very qualified individual and a person who has, I'm going to jump to what we talk about here today. She goes into being a double boarded. So she's both a surgeon as well as a rehab specialist, and quickly discovers what it looks like in practice and burnout and identifying whether she actually wanted to be in the veterinary industry or not. And we go into some of the tactical pieces that she looked at to identify next steps in her journey of veterinary medicine. We talk about stepping outside of clinical practice and how she determined that becoming a KOL, which is a key opinion leader, can work in the pharmaceutical industry. Then jumping back in to be a business owner because she thought that's what she needed to do. And now looking at next steps within her career, as well as passion project related to care, which you're going to learn about. We dive into a lot today. So get ready for the ride. And having flipped the switch completely today.
Yeah, you're going way off script.
I totally am.
Holy man. You're still putting Baileys in your coffee in the morning, aren't you?
Hey, don't tell everybody that. I don't even have coffee right now. I got the protein and water going.
Okay.
Pipes in order. Okay, let's talk bio. Dr. Kristin Kirkby Shaw. She is.
Well, you're not even going to let me do a quick tip or what? Like we're throwing the whole show out the window. Like 2021, forget everything. Forget the whole flow. Johnny, this is the Johnny podcast, new format.
This is how we roll, Mike. This is what we do on the Veterinary Project. All right, moving it over to Mike for an amazing 2021 quick tip.
Okay. Mike, I got to catch myself here. Okay, my quick tip, starting off the new year, around, goal setting. And I believe the step before goal setting is vision planning. I'm a huge proponent of vision planning. And my quick tip for everyone is during that vision process where, you know, you go somewhere that's inspiring and you're just, it's all blue ocean, thinking about what you can create, what you want your life to be. The quick tip is to throw out the word how. At that phase in the process, how does not matter. You do not need to spend any time thinking about how you are going to get to your destination. Just let yourself run, kind of run wild with anything and everything and whatever you think. You don't need to worry about getting there. So that's my quick tip. Throw out the word how when you're doing your vision plan.
Mike, I'm going to take your advice.
Good. Right on. I'm glad you let me speak.
Finally. All right. Jumping back into a bio. Thanks for a great quick tip. Dr. Kristin Kirkby Shaw. She is a small animal surgeon and rehabilitation specialist whose career has focused on bridging the gap between these two disciplines, with specific emphasis on treatment of arthritis. Kristin received her DVM from the University of Florida in 2003. She also completed a small animal surgery residence, a Master of Science, and a PhD at the University of Florida. She became a diplomat of the American College of Veterinary Surgery in 2009 and a diplomat of the American College of Veterinary Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation in 2013. Kristin is a managing partner and surgeon at Animal Surgical and Orthopedic Center in Seattle and medical director of the Rehabilitation Department, Sound Veterinary Rehabilitation Center. She's also the primary instructor for the Canine Rehabilitation Institute. 2019, she founded CARE, stands the acronym for Canine Arthritis Resources and Education, in order to be able to provide evidence-based resources and tools for veterinarians and pet owners caring for dogs with arthritis. Without further ado, Dr. Kristin Kirkby Shaw. Kristin, thank you very much for joining Mike and I this morning. This is really a pleasure. I'm excited about this conversation. I say that for everyone. I really do, but I am truly excited about this one. You were, when we were thinking about who to have on the podcast, you were one of my main top 5 lists. We've known each other for years, colleagues, personal friends, and where the conversation within the veterinary podcast and the project has gone over the last year, I couldn't think of a better guest at this time. So thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I've told you, Jonathan, that this is my favorite podcast, and that's no offense to other ones I've been on, but I think what you guys are doing here is really special, and it's truly an honor to be here.
Yeah, that means a lot. A place I thought we could start this morning, Kristin, is looking at a little bit about your time in veterinary practice. We've read your bio already. People have no choice but to be immensely impressed about the range and diversity of practice and where you've gone already since graduating in 2009.
2003.
Excuse me, 2003. Tell me a little bit about, or tell us a little bit about finding your niche in veterinary medicine, where it has taken you over this past decade and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll back up a little bit. They're kind of pre-bio part that most people don't know is I was born in Panama in Central America and grew up with all kinds of critters. So I had a sloth and an otter and monkey and owls and snakes. And so I grew up with this menagerie of animals, including dogs and cats. But I, always loved animals and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I'm going to answer that question. Yes, I always wanted to be a vet. But I went to vet school knowing that I was going to do something different. And like many people, I thought I was going to be a wildlife vet or a zoo vet. So I never, ever wanted to be a general practitioner. Like it just never crossed my mind. And in my first year of vet school, I had the opportunity to spend the summer at a marine mammal rehab facility in California. And I loved it. It was amazing. But I realized that I actually liked the client interaction. I thought I did. So I thought I wanted to work more with pet animals, but I always knew I wanted to specialize. And so going through vet school, I was like on track, like I'm going to be a specialist. I briefly thought I was going to be an ophthalmologist. That was my first rotation in clinics. And then once I got to orthopedic surgery, it was like done. Fell in love. And so I was fortunate enough to get a residency at University of Florida, where I'd done all my undergrad and vet school. And even then, as a resident, I was like, I just didn't feel like I was going to be that private practice surgeon. It was like, just didn't really feel like me.
Yep.
And there was one day I remember when Dr. Steve Fox, who worked for Novartis at the time, Novartis Animal Health, he came and talked to us about pain management, and it's probably Daramax and Adequan at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait a second, he's a surgeon and his job is to travel around and talk about pain management. Like, that's pretty cool. I didn't even know that was an option. So I always had that in the back of my mind, but finished my surgical residency, and I still wasn't quite ready to like jump out in the real world. So I stayed on as faculty for a couple years, finished my PhD, and I was like, all right, I've got this surgery background. I'm just going to go try and be a surgeon for a little while. And I was done with Florida. I'd been there for a very long time, and so I had the chance to move completely across the country to Seattle and joined a private practice. And it was a valuable experience. I'll say that. But there came a point where I was so done that I didn't even think I wanted to be a vet anymore. And that's where I had been a speaker for Novartis at that time, and knew there was an opening with the professional services in the Northwest, and applied. And that was kind of my first foray into the veterinary industry, where you and I met, Jonathan. So
that's correct. The rebuild of the Northwest.
Yeah. Quickly to be undone.
Yes. At least we didn't last long, did we?
No.
Thank you, Elanco, for buying Novartis.
Yeah.
I need to jump back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I have two questions in regards to that story. Is first, the vast majority of people that I have had the opportunity to speak with that have become specialists and working with specialists now for a number of years, they don't find their niche, or they don't even understand what that means to want to become a specialist until that third or fourth year, sometimes second, but third or fourth year of vet school, when they actually get exposure. You said something very interesting. You said that I always knew I didn't want to be in general practice. Mm-hmm. How did you know that? And how did you figure that out?
That's a great question. In high school and in undergrad, I worked at a general practitioner. In high school, it was a mixed animal practice, cleaning kennels. And then in undergrad, I again cleaned kennels, was an assistant at a small animal practice that had an exotics kind of niche. Like there was a few birds and hedgehogs that came in. And I don't know why, just the general practice part of it never really, vaccines and that just never really appealed to me. I just thought I was going to be a zoo vet. Like that was going to be the thing I was going to do. And, throughout your life, whenever you tell people that you want to be a vet, at first, when you're really young, they say, oh, that's great. Good job. And then as the older you get, they're like, oh, you know how hard it is to become a vet? And so the more and more people told me that, I was like, well, I'm going to show you. And then especially if you say, I'm going to be a zoo vet, they're like, oh, that's really hard. There's not very many jobs in that. And I don't know, I guess it's my personality. I was like, well, I'm going to show them. Obviously I didn't. But I think I had that drive, that I had something to prove, which is not a good thing. I don't recommend that at all. But I think I had that like drive to do something more.
So then in taking that drive to prove and do something more, to my second question relating to then possibly wanting to leave the industry in total after your first role, tell us a little bit about that, because I think that in our pre-recording discussion and something I've known about you for a long, long time is you're very open, and we're going to go down this road a lot in this conversation. Describe for us a little bit about what that felt like and what got you to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a scary and sad feeling, and partly why I'm enjoying your podcast and hearing other people that have had these thoughts is like, I had worked so hard to be a vet, and I was like, it was clear burnout. Like I just, just was burnt out, and all of the things that come along with that. And at that time, I didn't really know all of the other things. I knew that there was these industry type jobs, but I just thought maybe I'm just not cut out to be a vet. Maybe this whole thing of I got to prove myself was wrong, and I never took the time to really figure out what I wanted to be. So it was a pretty dark time for a few months. For months going up to the date that I actually quit. I had to get myself out of the house every day, and in order to do that, I made myself an almond butter and Nutella sandwich, and I would eat it on the way to work. And that was the only way I could get myself out of the door. And then finally, just this one day, there had been a number of other people in this particular practice that had already left because it was a very toxic environment. And finally, one day, it was like, it really wasn't that different of a day. It was just like the last straw. Okay. And I was like, I'm done. Of course, I had 2 more months to work there and then finish out my contract, but yeah.
Do you think that if that environment wouldn't have been a toxic environment, you would have lasted longer? Or do you think you had not gone through the process yet of figuring out really where you wanted to be?
I think if it had been a different environment, I may have lasted longer. I also, looking back, I could have done some things different. I think, I've spent a lot of time trying to learn about myself and explore, like, what could I have done differently, and could there have been things? And I think, yes, I could have done some things differently, but ultimately most people don't stay in their first job. So it was a stepping stone for sure. And now the current practice that I'm in, night and day. So I think I have the contrast of a very, very, very wonderful practice to work in, contrasting with, good people, but not a great work environment.
Okay. And Kristin, just to set the timeline for the listeners, you graduated in 2003. What year is this? Like when you're at that practice feeling this burnout?
So I started that practice in 2010, and this was 2013 when I left that position.
Okay. So like the 10-year mark after graduation.
Roughly.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to dive into this in a little bit, but I want to go back to that comment. And this is something we're focusing on in my workplace right now, is accountabilities, personal accountabilities. When you look back at that and you go, okay, here's some particular tangible pieces I could have done different. Do you mind sharing any of those that you look back now with maturity, time, experience?
Yeah.
And that, again, for our listeners that may be going through that right now and are saying, hey, what did she do? Or what didn't she do that might have worked better?
I think a couple things. One is, at that time in kind of 2013, just the idea of burnout, compassion fatigue was really just starting to be talked about. And so it didn't feel okay to have that conversation. But what I would say is, and even towards the end of my time there, I talked to the other surgeon who was my boss. If I had had more conversations with him, just sharing like the challenges of the job and like, oh my God, this client, I think that would make a big difference. And to contrast it, so right now where I work, I'm one of 6 surgeons. We share an office, and all day, every day, we're like, oh my God, can you believe this client? And can you believe this case? And that helps, just kind of that venting. This other practice, I had my own little cubicle. There was it didn't feel supportive. So I think had I done something differently, it would have been trying to reach out. And, this other surgeon, he was very good mentor in terms of like, hey, can you come into the OR? What do you think about this? And we would, we were friends outside of work, but we didn't have that kind of discussion of the challenges of the job that I think you need to vent.
Excellent. So great on the practical skills, maybe not as great on maybe not influence, but moving through those initial tough parts of veterinary medicine, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
And how to deal with those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Or even that venting, like you said, having a place to release.
Yeah. And I think, again, to like, what could I have done differently? I could have reached out more to, whether it was him or other colleagues and friends, and just reached out and shared the challenges that I was feeling. I'm also one that tends to take on a little too much. So perhaps I could have not taken on as much as I had at the time. Yeah.
Yep. So then you leave that role and you're exploring different opportunities. We had the opportunity to meet when you were in a PSV role and then a KOL role with Novartis, learning what your favorite things are within veterinary medicine. To me, it sounded throughout your career, you've been very conscious of moving towards where you're both good at and interested. Can you tell us about that? Because it's, again, not led you down a straight path.
Yeah. So, one of the things I had the fortunate, experience of having an amazing mentor in my residency, Dr. Dan Lewis. And one of the things that he got to do was travel around the world and talk about orthopedic surgery. Actually, the first time I met him, I was in Australia and he was speaking at a conference. And so I went to him as a resident. I said, I want to do what you do. I want to be able to get paid to travel around the world. And so as a resident, he was like, you have to find your niche and your thing that you get asked to come speak about. And at that time, this was kind of 2004, 5-ish. This was the early days of veterinary rehabilitation. Okay. And so, I was in, very strong orthopedic surgical residency, but we didn't have any rehab at all. And so I kind of went down the route of getting certified and trained in rehab, kind of built the rehab department at the University of Florida. And because of that, because I was a surgeon that had a specialty in rehab, I got opportunities to do speaking and doing these other things. And so I think building on that has continued. That really has been what's grown this zigzaggy career. And then more recently, probably over the last 5 years or so, I've honed that down to be specific arthritis OA. I'm not the neuro rehab person. I don't want to be at all. So it's purely OA.
And niching yourself in, and also that is a whole different skill set. It's not like you're in the surgery. You're now speaking to 50, 100, a couple of hundred individuals. Tell us a little bit about what you had to do from a skill set standpoint to be able to take that on. It's one thing to know the information. It's another thing to be able to deliver it in a format that people actually want to listen to and you're proud of. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm still learning and still gaining those skills. But in terms of being a public speaker, I grew up in the theater. I was a dancer. I was a little known fact. I was a cheerleader in high school. So I have
this is a little known fact. Look at what we're learning today, Mike. More to be able to go with.
Yeah, that comes as a surprise to a lot of people. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was used to being in front of people, used to being on stage. In many respects, I feel more comfortable being behind a podium on a stage talking to 1,000 people than I do one-on-one. At someone who I don't know.
Yep. So it's something that's obviously always come naturally to you, that extrovert portion of you, and then
but I'm still
to jump in, do you consider yourself an extrovert, or
no?
Do you play extrovert well? Okay.
No, that's an extrovert portion for sure.
Yeah. Whenever I do the test, I'm right on the line, but I'm on the introvert side. But I'm not like Jonathan. I'm not that type of extrovert.
No one is.
Yes, there are many more than me. Let's talk about that then. No. So you go to conferences when it's post-COVID, pre-COVID, in a different world. You spend a lot of time with individuals. I've seen you in action, and there's 10 people just waiting to talk to you, to spend your time. What do you do to relax, de-stress, get away? It's a really interesting conversation because different colleagues vent or release in different ways. How does Kristin do that?
I love that part of it. I love conferences. I love talking to other vets, after a presentation and they come up and we talk. That's my favorite part of the job. So I don't really feel like I have to unload after that, the natural stress reliever things, running and wine. But on a day-to-day basis, I get a lot more life sucked out of me from clients than I do from colleagues.
Okay. Mike, I'd like to jump into a different section. Any follow-ups on those points?
I don't know if they're specific to that point, but kind of going back when you said, you made some of your decisions because you had something to prove and you don't recommend others do that. How did you shift? Like, how did you shift away from making your decisions about proving something to other people to doing it for yourself?
This is literally something that I'm in the process of doing. Like literally. I've made decisions up until 5 years ago, still trying to prove I can be a business owner. I can, you know, I think that was the last one I had to prove, is like, I can be a business owner. And, you know, I think it's, as you know, maybe the one benefit of getting older is starting to gain some wisdom and starting to have that, you know, introspection of looking at, you know, is this who I want to be and what I'm doing? And I know for me, journaling, so like really kind of taking the time to write out my feelings, and that has helped tremendously over the last kind of few years, trying to figure out, like, I've got nothing left to prove. I've just got to figure out how I can enjoy my career and enjoy my life.
And just tactically on the journaling, do you follow like a guided journal or just blank page and start writing?
Blank page. I've tried like ones that are, you know, prompting, but for me, it's just blank pages, and there will be years or months that I go without, and then times where I really need to kind of hone down and focus, and it helps a lot.
Yeah. And then do you reflect back, like reread them? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think the last year I've had a passion planner, which does ask you kind of prompting questions, but I've got my passion planner, and then I've also got my blank page journal that, you know, is when I need to really start writing. And this 2020 required a lot of that.
Wow. Excellent. Great question, Mike. In our pre-recording, we discussed a little bit about your personal mission statement, which I thought was amazing and not something that I hear from many individuals at all. Do you mind sharing what that is and how that has evolved over time as we now move towards, you know, another project in your bag of projects called Care?
Yeah. So, you know, first of all, how did I develop a personal mission statement? I think I would never have had that idea if I hadn't spent some time in industry and starting to learn about business and business plans. And it was starting to kind of get to know myself and figure out what my niche was and where I was going to go, and what, you know, what I want to do, what my mission was, or what my purpose was. And so my mission statement is to help more animals than I can as a clinician. So as a clinician, it's, you know, you've got one animal in front of you at a time. And my mission is to help as many animals as I can, more than I can as a clinician.
It's fantastic. And how long from the inception thought of putting a mission statement together to your comfort level of sharing that with everyone around you was it? Because this
is the first time I've ever shared it.
Yeah, a first on the Veterinary Project podcast. I jumped on that in the pre-recording because I was so impressed that you were willing to say that. And I went, wow, that takes a lot of guts. That takes a lot of openness and to me, maturity to show that. And it also matches completely with you. So I know you, so I know that it matches so well, but it's another thing to actually put it out there. It's
there you go.
Excellent. Well, then let's move to our next piece of that puzzle as it relates to, you know, the last couple of years and a project called Care. Can you tell our listeners and ourselves more about it, why it came to be, and where it stands in 2021, early 2021?
Yeah. So CARE stands for Canine Arthritis Resources and Education. And it really has been a passion project of mine to essentially fulfill this mission statement. As you know, I came back to clinical practice about 5.5 years ago, and I wanted to still kind of have that broader reach. Yet also there was a small bit that was kind of selfish. I was doing these, you know, I would do a lot of presentations talking about arthritis, and inevitably I would get a lot of emails from veterinarians asking a lot of times very, very similar questions. And, I had all of these proceedings that I'd written for all these different conferences. And I was like, I just want to have a landing page where everybody can go get this information. And hopefully it will help them. And then I was like, what else I could do is build this out so it helps me in my practice be more efficient and have tools and resources I can share with my clients. And then also help pet owners understand more about arthritis from an evidence-based standpoint that is written by specialists in the field, not just kind of the standard Dr. Google.
Yeah.
So we started the project 2 years ago in almost 3 years, 2018 and end of 2018.
Who is
so my partners in it were actually my brother-in-law and his wife that are not veterinarians, but they are big time dog lovers, and they come at it from the kind of IT marketing communication side. So I needed that help to kind of make this thing happen. So I wrote all the content, I filmed all the videos, they made the actual website happen. Okay. And so what it is it's you can find it at caninearthritis.org, so caninearthritis.org. It is a free site. So as veterinary professionals, whether it's veterinarians or technicians, you do have to create a login so that you get access to the veterinary specific content. Otherwise, there's the dog owner section, which is really the same information, just written more for the pet owner audience. On the veterinary side, there's 5 or 6 race approved, CE. There's some tools that I use every day in practice. There's a nutrition calculator, figuring out how many calories of treats you get to give. Videos of like how various different therapeutic exercises that, how do you teach a dog to do backwards walking? How do you teach a dog to do down to stand? So you can send these YouTube links to clients so that they can learn how to do them. There's PDFs you can print out, share with clients. How do I know my dog is in pain? Everything you need to know about elbow dysplasia. So there's a ton of content on there. Yeah. And
from going from a passion project, even in its inception, this is a lot of work. I've been on that site. I've watched you grow it over the last number of years. This is not a small deal. And please, anybody out there, go have a look at it. We're not getting paid to say this in any way whatsoever.
I'm not getting paid by it either. So it was all volunteer.
And that's what makes it even more impressive.
Yeah.
How have you found the time, resources, and I know your love of dogs. I know your love, and that can drive you, and that can drive you a long ways, but then there's still so much more further you have to go. How have you done this at the same point as being a managing partner, a surgeon, traveling, a wife, all of the other pieces that come into life?
Yeah. I don't do much else. I don't have kids. I think that's a big part of it. And I don't do much else. So it was a lot more work than I expected. I thought it was just going to be kind of repurposing stuff that I'd already written. But once it was like really going to be live up there, I basically wound up rewriting a lot of it. We put books together, and so it was a lot of work, a lot of weekends spent doing this. But I really love being productive, and I love having like a finished product to show for it. So to be honest, I more enjoyed building care than I enjoyed doing surgery. That's like blasphemy to say as a surgeon, but I would rather be in front of my computer writing than I would be in the OR.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the next question I have, is that in the last couple of years, you yourself have said you've spent a lot of time working on yourself, starting to develop those life boundaries.
Yep.
Work-life balance, if that so exists in Kristin's world. And also looking at what next steps look like. It's not often you have a surgeon that says, hey, I would rather be writing than doing surgery.
Yeah.
Where is this evolution taking you, and where do you see this moving forward? It's a big deal. And I think this fits to our listeners perfectly as we evolve and know that we're not just stuck in one place.
Yeah. I have, so you say the word stuck. I have, unfortunately, the first thing I would say is I have made it. I have quote unquote made it. Like I've done everything I've ever wanted to do. And my job is awesome. I love the people I work with. But um, I I was starting to feel stuck about a year ago. And part of that was like, okay, well, I've proven that I can be a business owner. Um, what's next? And then feeling this kind of stuck. And I thought, well, maybe it's just I need to get some things off of my plate and approach things differently and just, really concentrate on I'm an orthopedic surgeon. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to work on care.
Yep.
Out of kind of the blue, I had an opportunity presented to me, which is literally just still in the works. And so I can't officially say who I'm going to work for, but I did have an opportunity to present where I will be leaving practice in the next couple months to be a arthritis and pain specialist for an animal health company. And so I wouldn't have left my position and taken this job if it weren't incredibly exciting and kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity.
And looking back at what you spoke with your resident or as a resident to what he was doing and now what you're going to be doing going forward, hopefully.
Yeah. And, I think, as you mentioned, my career has not been linear. And I was actually talking to a good friend and colleague of mine a couple of days ago, letting her know that I was leaving practice. And she said that I'm really good at change. And I was like, I guess that's right. Like, I guess there's people out there that are not good at change. And I'm quite good at change. And realize that, especially with industry, there are opportunities to grow and evolve with, as your professional self within the confines of this industry more than there is in clinical practice. So that's what I'm looking forward to is, I've got this new role, which I can't wait to start. And then, continuing to grow professionally.
I'm so excited to watch for the next evolution. And it's going to be great. And I'm proud of you as both a friend and colleague.
Thank you.
Before we come to an end and we have to move into the next segment of our podcast, jumping back into change management, for those in our world, we have a lot of individuals in our world that don't know how to change, don't know what that first step looks like. Is there anything particular that you think of or look at that you'd be able to share from that standpoint in terms of, making those next steps when you're feeling stuck or what to do?
Well, I think the first thing is just not being scared of change. And, I think in the last year, everybody's learned that you have to be adaptable. In clinical practice, you have to be able to adapt. And for me, I've always liked to be kind of on the control side of that adaptability and that change. And so I've most of the time been proactive, except for this last time, been proactive in kind of seeking out what's going to be the next step. So the first step, just not being afraid of doing something different. And then, networking and reaching out and talk to other people. And, this podcast is a great example of, hearing how other people have done it and that it is possible. Spending time trying to get to know or understand whatever change it is you're looking for, whether it's industry or in different practice, talking to the people in that and understand what does this new job, what does this new role actually look like to understand that. And then just taking the leap. And I would say be prepared for it, financially, from your support structure, but then take the leap.
Excellent. And I think also from that standpoint, then if it doesn't work, that's all right.
Yeah. I mean, as veterinarians, Aaron, my husband's an occupational therapist, and, I don't know if we're going to talk about it. He's a business owner himself. And we've always talked about, we can do these ventures. And if they don't work out, we can always go back to being a veterinarian and an occupational therapist. Like that's the beauty of this profession.
We are so lucky, so blessed in that way. At the end of the day, we can go cut things, clients. And as COVID has shown, to our fortune, really, and blessed that way, we have animals to look after.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. Mike, any closing thoughts, questions on your end that way?
Just a closing thought. I really like you mentioned how much you enjoy writing, and honoring that, right? You had something inside yourself, internal, that is maybe not the norm amongst surgeons, right? But you still honored that, and now it's become probably more than you expected from the get-go, and it's amazing when you step into that, where it leads you. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Love it. We're moving in the next round now. And this next round is called the impact round. And so in this round, we are going to ask you a number of questions, of which you can answer short or as long as you'd like. And our first question, Kristin, for today is, are you a cat or a dog person?
Oh, that's such an easy one. I'm a dog person.
Oh.
I know you guys are not. And so I'm trying to up the tally of dog people.
We are going to have to go back and see what the score is sitting at. It's probably close. I don't know.
So fun. So much fun. And you are definitely a dog person.
I'm definitely a dog person. Yeah.
True or false? I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian since I was a kid.
Yep. Yeah. Briefly, I wanted to be an astronaut, but I thought they were going to need an astronaut to go into space. And yes, obviously they have had veterinarians go into space, but yes, true.
Both. How would your friends describe what you do for a living?
So, I think right now, most of my close friends are in the veterinary profession. So they understand. The ones that are not, they are still my closest friends from high school and vet school. And they're the ones that text me and ask me, what kind of puppy should I get, or behavior questions. So I think they understand kind of the world of a veterinarian because they've taken their pet to a vet. I don't think they quite get the specialty side of it, that I'm doing knee surgery most of the time.
Yeah. And not vaccinating a 12-week-old puppy.
Yeah. And all of the other things that I do on the side.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is your favorite hobby?
What's a hobby?
That's great.
Yeah.
Great answer, Rachel. Great answer.
I'm trying to work on that one too. So what I'm not sure about is, tell me so I make time in my day to work out, whether it's running or lifting weights. Does that count as a hobby? If it's something that I'm purposely it's important in my day, I've got to do that. It's not something that I do in my spare time. Does that count as a hobby?
I've never looked at the definition of hobby. I'd say a strong yes, but that's only me.
Yeah.
Mike?
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Okay.
Works for me. Yep. Kristin, what in this world are you most grateful for?
Oh, my family, by far. I wouldn't be where I am without, the support of my parents getting here. And then on a day-to-day basis, every single day, I'm grateful for my husband, Aaron, the support of everything that, in the last 10 years we've gone through. So, yeah.
A great individual. And I'm sorry that we didn't have the time to go into that portion of our pre-recording.
He's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Great individual. Kristin, this has been a pleasure. I know for a fact, we've gone deep here, which is amazing in a short amount of time. And I know we could spend another hour for sure on some of these topics. If people want to reach out to you, get to know more about care or other places or other things that you're involved with in the industry, where's the best place for them to reach out to you at?
So with regard to care, again, it's caninearthritis.org. And that is a great place to look for, questions or information about arthritis. It was kind of my brain spilled onto there. You can email info@caninearthritis.org. I'm trying to set boundaries in terms of, having all of these emails coming in. So what I would really, really, really love is when the day comes that we're all back at conferences, if you have a question and you see me, just please come up and talk to me. I'd much just rather chat in person. But if it's urgently before that, either info@caninearthritis.org or on LinkedIn. I don't try not to do much else with other social media.
Excellent. Well, in closing, thank you. Exceeded
expectations.
Knew this was going to be a blast. We had back and forth discussion over Christmas here, and very, very excited for you for next steps in your career, and look forward to, watching and learning and participating where possible. It's great.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Kristin. And I can certainly vouch for the fact what Johnny said off the start. he has been chatting about you for months, maybe even a full year now. I haven't kept track.
Been from the start. Yeah.
So thanks so much.
Oh, thank you guys.
So as we close today on our podcast, as with all of our guests, we leave the last message to our guests. So what message do you want to leave for the veterinary community?
So one of my favorite quotes that I heard pretty recently, actually, while I was binge watching The Crown, it was, I believe, on season 3. The Prime Minister is talking to Claire Foy version of Queen Elizabeth. He says, "We can't be everything to everyone and still be true to ourselves." And I think maybe it was right where the time that I needed to hear that. And I don't know if that's a real quote or if it was just brilliant writing, but it really hit home for me. I think it holds true for the veterinary profession that, you've got to take time to figure out and explore your passions within the profession, but also really, really take that time to figure out who you are, because you may have gotten into vet school right out, you may have been 20 years old and you might be a completely different person now. You may have achieved that goal of becoming a DVM or a specialist and now think, well, now what am I going to do? Or you might be completely happy in your career and where you are, but just burnt out or stressed with the demands of the profession. So no matter where you are, you got to take the time to figure out who you are and be true to yourself and not who others expect you to be. And only then can you really have the greatest impact on others.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes weekly, so be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and you want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others that may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you please share the show with them, as this will help us grow our community to reach more and more veterinary professionals. Speaking of which, if you are a veterinary professional and would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send an email to the veterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or perhaps requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent to the Veterinary Project Podcast @gmail.com. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.